place Saturday at UMass. Go ahead with questions for Coach Babers.
Coach, will you talk a little bit about their new coach? I mean, new coach slash old coach there.
I've known Mark since 1998 when he was the coach there the first time. We were having one-back clinics around the country, and it was the very first time I met him where every coach would come with their specialty play from one back and get up and talk about that play to try to get one-back offenses going around the country. So he's been an offensive guy for a long time, left the college ranks and went to the pros, I believe, with the Steelers and the Cleveland Browns, and now he's back in college football. He's very, very knowledgeable about the game and very sharp with the X's and O's.
Did you take any look at UMass from years past, or just focus on the four from this year?
No,
for a comparison.
No, we needed to focus on what they did this year, and really we not only that, but we needed to focus on what we were doing. So we spent time on them, but we also spent time on ourselves.
But when you say spend time on yourselves, more than you would normally?
We wanted to make sure that this is kind of like a break for us from non-conference to MAC play, and we wanted to make sure not only schemes but techniques and fundamentals are improving the way we want them to improve, and if not, maybe we need to change a technique or get rid of certain things to make sure that we elevate our play when we get into conference play. Excuse me for a second, I got a huge itch on my nose. Okay, go ahead.
What do you kind of take away from last Saturday's game as you move forward? Do you just kind of put it on the back burner and put it away, or do you kind of think back on that moment?
You know what? This one you can put away a lot quicker. I mean, when you get into a fight and you lose the fight, you go back and think about the things you did wrong. When you get into a fight and you get killed, I mean, it was really cool that you fought. That showed courage, but we didn't have a very good chance of winning that game based off of the way we played and the whole circumstances. So this one you put away a lot faster, and you start looking forward to conference play and getting ready for UMass.
You talk a lot about, to be a good team, you got to be able to win on the road. Obviously going on the road this week, what kind of differences do you from home game to on the road?
Well, it's just the distractions. You're playing in front of a hostile crowd. You're not playing, and you don't have the familiar surroundings, and those added things that are not quite right, and being able to rally and pull together, and seeing if you can do the little things, cross the T's, dot the I's to win on the road, which is a sign of maturity for a football team. So we want to mature, and we want to be a good football team. So we're desperate to go out there on the road and see if we can find a win.
So going into conference play, what have you learned from your team as a whole throughout the first 4 games of the season?
I've learned that the team that I started with is not the team that is going into conference. We've got a ton of injuries. We've been doing a lot of recoaching because of the people from spring ball and two-a-days, and we've got to keep it balanced. I mean, I'll give you a classic examples like with the offense. The offense was geared one way for Matt Johnson, and now it needs to be geared another way for James Kanafke. The plays that we may have been practicing with Matt Johnson now, some of those plays have to go on the shelf, and you have to do other plays for James. Well, those examples on offense is no different than the examples on defense. You could be gearing the defense one way based off of who you've got in certain areas and pushing the offense to certain players that may have greater skill, and then as you lose those players, you have to readjust and push the offense a different way based off of who your best players are out there. So I'm trying to make it simple, but I mean there's some complication to it, and trying to make sure that offensively and defensively people are going through your best players in order to beat you.
When you make those kind of adjustments, are those adjustments in scheme? Like, for example, to use the defensive example, maybe losing one guy forces you or makes you decide to go to more of a nickel scheme or maybe a dime scheme or things like that? Is it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It depends on who gets hurt and what situation and what his expertise was. where it can gear you more to zone, more to man, more to twist, more to straight rush, and then what their replacements are able to do. Whether it's a replacement that is very, very young and has none of those skills, or a replacement that has half the skill set of a starter, and then you have to push his, you have to do things that's good on his skill set instead of allowing him to do everything until you develop him into where he can be a full starter for you.
Is there any way to speed that development?
Not legally. We're only allowed to be with them so long and so much during the day, and that's what ties your hands. And you know, as I was telling the coaches in the staff meeting, that's why you always coach your backups like they're your starters, because someday they may be, you know, based off of an injury. So you just can't say you've got a great player as a starter and you're not coaching that backup, because that backup is one injury away from being your starter. You have to spend time with your backups.
Coach Phil had said, where do you see the team going into non-conference play with all the kind of coaching, like you said?
You know, we're going to have to go out there and we're going to have to see. I think that we're in a good place. I think that we have players, and I think we need to make sure that our players are put in situations where they can help us offensively and defensively in the kicking game. And then we're going to have to see how those backups, so to speak, play. The one cool thing is just because they're a backup doesn't mean that you're not going to go out there and perform. They haven't had as many opportunities, and you haven't seen them in those situations, so you can have a comfort level with them performing. But you know, I'm excited to see what the new guys are going to do offensively and defensively.
Follow up on that, Coach. You mentioned, I think either in post game, maybe in the coaches show, about some folks that you got to look at in the fourth quarter of the Wisconsin game might impact the depth chart. Can you expand on that a little bit? Some things that you saw in the fourth quarter of that game?
Well, I thought that Phillips went in and did a nice job tackling. You know, we had such a hard time tackling those running backs, and we had some starters in there that had some difficulties. Then he went in there and made some tackles late that I thought really showed up and helped the backups when they were in there playing late in the second half. And then Andre, you know, Andre's big run, that was their starting secondary in there. That wasn't their backups. I mean, I went back and checked the numbers of those guys that were in the game at that time, and you know, he ran right through their starting secondary. So I was excited to see that, and you know, we're going to try to find some other ways to get Andre on the field.
Moving forward, give us a little preview of what we can expect this Saturday from Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin?
I mean, from UMass.
You know, I think defensively, they're a 30-40 front team. They'll really stay balanced. They're not going to say, if you look at their numbers, they're almost 50-50. So they change fronts constantly. They go from man to zone in various coverages on the back end, almost a Rolodex effect to try to keep the offense off balance. Their kickoff returner is very, very explosive. If the ball stays in the field of play, they have a guy that can change the game. When he catches the ball, I believe it is number 9, one of their safeties. I believe he's a Florida kid. And then from an offensive standpoint, their quarterback is really, really good. He's a tall guy. You see him throwing the field out. You see him throwing the ball down the football field. He's very, very good. They have a speed receiver from Florida, I think, that knows some of our kids, Travis and Box, that can stretch the football field. He's very, very tall. And then they have, I can't remember this young man's name, but he was the one that caught the fake versus Vanderbilt and then took it to the house. He's a 6'1", 205-pound type guy. But it seems like they're trying to find numerous ways to get this young man the ball. And he's very, very athletic, and he makes plays. So they've got football players, and they're going to try to get their best players the ball, I'm sure. And we're going to try to do the exact same thing and then see what happens. It's a very dangerous game. I mean, for them not to be on campus for a while and be going back there, and it's homecoming. The 4 opponents that they played, those were all, I mean, Colorado, BC that beat USC, Vanderbilt in the SEC, and I'm forgetting their 4th game. Somebody help me. Oh my goodness, yeah, you know, Penn State. So, I mean, that's got to be one of the toughest non-conference schedules in the conference. And 2 of those games they were leading in the second half, and I want to say 2 of the games, Vanderbilt and Colorado, they were leading in the 4th quarter. And for a team to go out there and do that, all 4 of those games on the road, I think that's big. So I think we have a very, very dangerous opponent, and you can tell that they're thirsty for a win. You know, we just hope they don't get it this week. They're going to get one, though. That's a good football team.
Given that with your guys, and you mentioned earlier for you, it's easy to forget about Wisconsin. You know, going into UMass, you have a clean slate, max schedule. Do you see the guys, you know, as well, quickly forgetting Madison?
Well, I hope so. That's what we've been working on. We told them that they needed to clear it, they needed to reboot their computers, and they need to get ready to go. I mean, if you would have told us at the beginning of the year that we were going to be 2-2 at this point and rolling into UMass, I think everybody would have took it. Now, it might not have looked exactly the way that those first 4 games looked, but 2-2 is sound. That's a sound non-conference record. And now let's go into conference and see what we can do.
You talked about what UMass has breaking down their line and naming some guys, but where do you feel that there might be some advantages for you when you look at it, some of your guys that they might have a hard time stopping you in certain areas?
You know, I don't want to give the whole game plan out on tape, but especially on video. But I think there's some advantages, and I think there's some things we need to try to take advantage of. And I was making a point to the coaches. I said, when this game's over, you can't come back home and say, God, I wish we'd have done this. You know, bologna cheese. Okay, we need to be crossing T's, dotting I's, and make sure that those things get out there early in the game so that we can see exactly where we're at with their personnel.
Is it harder, Coach, to judge what they do because of their competition? I mean, is it harder to figure out things when they're facing Penn State and getting stuff blown up and things like that?
You know, we just got through watching tape, and I'm watching their D-line versus Boston College, and they are blowing Boston College's offensive linemen in the backfield, 2-3 yards in the backfield on the goal line. And this is the same Boston College that beats USC. So I'm not sure how to answer that, because they're going against really, really good competition, and they're doing really, really good things. So it's not a great feeling that I have right now. We've got to get out there and we've got to put our guys against their guys, and once we get in the flow of the game, we'll have a better feel.
Anything else for Coach?